Hello and welcome. I'm George Crump, lead analyst with Storage Switzerland. Thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to talk about fixing what is often a blind spot in most people's backup strategy, and that is the protection of endpoints like laptops, for example. And we're going to talk specifically about how the cloud can be an ideal way to really fix that blind spot. Joining me in the conversation is Carla Federico, Director of Marketing at InfoScale. Carla, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate everyone's time and being here as well.
And then joining her also from InfoScale is a sales engineer from InfoScale, Daniel Covey. Daniel, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Great to be here.
So, guys, before we get too far into the presentation, Carla, I'll let you start. Why don't you give us a quick background on yourself and then also kind of what InfoScale is all about?
Sure, thanks. And so, like George mentioned, my name is Carla Federico, and I've been with InfoScale for the last 6 years. InfoScale is a cloud backup and disaster recovery provider, and we're really sticking to our mission of eradicating downtime and data loss. So if it's just sort of one focus or one point that you take from today's webinar, we're eradicating downtime and data loss. That's our mission, and that's really our focus. We're doing that with data protection strategy for cloud backup and disaster recovery as a service.
And Daniel, how about yourself? You want to give a little background on what you do at InfoScale? Daniel, are you on mute?
I was on mute. I apologize. So yeah, my name is Daniel Covey. I'm one of the sales engineers here at InfoScale, and I handle everything pre-sales. So from demos, webinars, deployments, and so forth. Been here for about 5 years almost, and so I handle anything that comes up beforehand. So happy to be here and helping out with the webinar.
Awesome. Thanks, Daniel. So, guys, let's jump into it. Let's talk first about sort of the concept of just protecting endpoints. You know, it's kind of funny. I can remember when the concept of, enterprise class laptop data protection came out 20 years ago, and that just means I'm old. But we were trying to compare the cost of doing that protection to buying a bunch of zip drives. Now I really just dated myself, but if you look at it, this has been something that I think IT has known it needs to take care of, but the ability to take care of it has been really pretty darn painful. It's protecting 4 or 5 Oracle servers is one thing. Protecting 4,000 or 5,000 laptops is just another thing in its entirety. And I think, Carl, it's just the scale of the problem that really causes a challenge for most IT folks, don't you think?
I do, and the rise of BYOD, bring your own device in corporate workplaces as well, just sort of snowballs that problem, right?
Yeah, because you used to be able to just legislate everybody gets this laptop, and before you get it, it goes through IT, and we're going to pre-install all this stuff, and now people are just hauling in whatever they want in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think the interesting thing is if you think about a laptop or a device of some type, it's the thing that is really kind of on the front lines, right? It's out in the field, and I'm in San Diego today, and as I was going through the airport, a guy left his laptop and was walking away, and the TSA person had said, "Hey, is this your laptop?" I mean, I don't know how you walk away without your laptop, but it can happen. And so I think that these are the things you're going to lose or get left behind. They're easily stolen nowadays. And so, just not even malicious intent, just the carelessness has these things get exposed, right?
That's right. And then just someone can access that data because it can so easily fall into the wrong hands as soon as it's stolen or left behind, like you say.
Yeah, and then, a lot of people still don't password protect, or if they do password protect, their systems are pretty weak. Another one I think is kind of interesting, Daniel, is that I've seen different numbers on these surveys, but generally it's over 50%, and then the one I cite here is 60, that data on endpoints is unique in that a version of it might be on a corporate server somewhere, but in many cases, this is a document that a CFO or somebody is creating and editing on the fly, and if that data isn't protected, it could be lost permanently and never be able to be recovered, right?
Absolutely. So you've got your best practices that in a perfect world, everybody's going to have their VPN on when they're out and about doing work, strictly working from the servers. But we all know that that's in the real world, that's not always possible, right? They may not have network connection. They may be in the air. They may be having, they just may want to work directly from their laptop, and that is the prerogative of some people. So having the ability to protect that is a huge boon for the IT team.
Yeah, like sustaining a VPN connection while you're using airplane Wi-Fi is, for anything more than a minute, is probably too much to ask, right? So I think the other big thing is obviously, we talk about ransomware and things like that, and Carla, you and I have done a webinar or two on that subject. But it's these devices that are often the point of entry into the organization. These are a lot of times the kind of the first hit in a ransomware attack, right?
Mm-hmm. And those ransomware hackers are getting more and more sophisticated all the time, so they're finding new and unique ways to penetrate those devices.
Yeah, such a waste of development talent, really, if you think about it.
I agree.
And the other thing is, I think is certainly worth mentioning here is with things like GDPR and then California's new Consumer something Act. Is Consumer Protection Act, right? There's now a specific legal requirement that corporate data on these devices be protected. So, if you don't do it just because it just makes sense, you might be legally required to protect this data now. And I think what we're seeing is regulations like that roll out around the world. The final point is, if you look at, so all of this, those are the problems, and then if you kind of throw this into the bucket of all the things that IT has to worry about, protection of endpoints comes like right after organizing the sock drawer, right? There's so many other things to worry about, and data protection processes are stretched as they are, and then throwing, one more thing like protection of endpoints, especially, Carla, to your point about the bring your own devices thing, because it's not that most users no longer have just one device, right? Most users have at least one laptop. They might have a tablet. They certainly have a smartphone. They might have a desktop, and so there's multiple devices per user that needs to protect. So it's not the fact that you might have 1,000 people working for you. They all might have 3 to 5 devices, so you might have to worry about 3,000 to 5,000 different devices, right?
Right. Yep, that's right.
So, you add all this up and we just got a big problem. So and so as we were talking about this problem, I thought, okay, well, why is it? And it really comes down to nobody likes this, right? I mean, IT doesn't like it. Like I said, there's thousands of endpoints. And as I said, also, most people have more than one. And that bring your own device thing really becomes sort of a management nightmare problem because you don't have this nice organized system. I remember when I worked for a big company in the late 90s and I was, given a laptop. I had no choice. The cost of laptops back in those days, I wasn't going to rebel against the system and go buy my own anyways. And I think it took from the day I hired, it took 3 weeks for the wonderful laptop to show up, right? And so because IT needed time to lock it down and do all the things that they do. But now you multiply this, you have this problem, people bringing in devices, it just goes overboard. And I think the other big challenge that we see a lot, and Daniel, I'll throw this to you, but some of these endpoint protection solutions, users just don't like them because it's very disruptive to their workflow. Nobody wants to be in the middle of writing a Word document and have the backup process kick off, and then their whole system, basically goes as slow as molasses, right?
Exactly, and so that's part of the problem of having it to where it's centralized. You need to have the backup kicks off for everybody based off of a server. They have to make sure they're connected to a server at a correct time and things like that. All of that really, as you said, it disrupts the user's daily workflow. They're in the middle of writing a big paper, or not big paper, but a big presentation, and then all of a sudden they've realized, oh, I'm 5 minutes late for the time I'm supposed to be in there to make sure I got my backup started. The least amount of interruption for the end user is going to make things a lot smoother, make them happier, which in turn they complain less to the IT guys.
Yeah, exactly. And Carl, I don't have a slide for it, but I bet you organizations like yours experience just like we do. We have devices that never come into our headquarters, right? That we have remote employees that are always remote. And I assume you guys would have sales and SE type of folks out in the field. Their laptops never coming in to be backed up, so it's got to figure out a way to back it up across the wire and do so very efficiently all the time, right?
Yeah, I think it goes to sort of the point that you're making here, where there's lots of factors that go into this as far as why no one likes it. It isn't just a sort of one reason. There are branch offices and remote locations that need to be protected. I see where you're going next here. The cost of it being really expensive, and people who just generally don't trust in the cloud. And so it's all of these factors that sort of roll into this one issue and this one problem. It's not just one single issue. Exactly,
and I think that the cost issue is especially a problem because if you don't have the cloud, it's an entirely upfront investment, right? You got to build a secondary storage system big enough to store data for thousands of laptops. You got to obviously buy the software to protect those. So you don't tend to buy, like most organizations didn't go out and buy their thousands of endpoints all at once, right? It was a sort of a cumulative thing that happened over the course of time. And now with bring your own devices, in many cases, they don't buy them at all, right? So all of this really just compounds to just, this is why it gets low prioritized, because if nobody likes it, everybody just would rather ignore it and hope it goes away sometime, right?
Right.
So, but, and what I see here is, we get into sort of a hope type of a strategy with endpoint protections. Essentially what I see when I'm talking to IT folks is there's sort of this hope that users are doing their own backup, which is, that's almost beyond hope. That's like, a very active imagination in my book that, there's, that's just not going to happen. Or they hope that users are copying documents to a centralized file server, which again, I don't see that. Now, the big one that I see, Daniel, is this sort of hope that that a file sync and share solution will provide some form of recovery. And I see a lot of dependence on, consumer grade file sync and share solutions as quote unquote backup. Do you see people doing that as well?
I do, and part of it is I feel is a specific trust in companies, in cloud companies to be in control of your data without realizing what they're actually providing. If you're using a file sync and share product, it's not always a product that also backs up your files. If somebody deletes that file out of your file share program, there's not always another copy to recover from, right? It's just like deleting it off of a desktop. If you don't have backups in place for that, then you're going to be in some trouble there. So while there is a place for those products, there's also other things that need to be added on to ensure you have a full protected solution.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, it's kind of the file sync and share conversation is very similar to the conversations, I'm sure you guys have them because you have a product in the space, but, I'm always talking to users about why they should back up Office 365 because they think that, because it's in Microsoft, it's magically protected and they don't have to worry about it anymore, right? And the challenge is that none of those solutions, none of the file sync and share solutions provide a point in time, if you will, standalone copy. So if you get hit by ransomware or if you have a rogue user or any of those things you always worry about, all of that stuff really cause challenges. And so having that standalone copy becomes really critical. Also, in most cases, one of the things we'll talk about, I think, later is what do you do if a laptop gets stolen, right? Most file sync and share type of solutions don't have a wipe type of capability. So that also causes some challenges. So we've talked about all the bad things. So let's talk about building a centralized strategy that everybody can, if you will, love, because love is essentially the opposite of hate. I don't know if it's a technical term, but so, how do we get there? So I think the first thing is, I can think of no other process. I got to be careful because I really think disaster recovery works well in the cloud too. But I can only think of two really good processes that so well justify the cloud. And obviously, disaster recovery as a service, which we talked about on our last webinar, is a good one. But endpoint backup is, Carlo, as I said, we talked about disaster recovery last time. But endpoint backup is kind of like right there as the cloud being an ideal place to kind of centralize that backup function, isn't it?
It really is. And I think that it just is a matter of having trust in the cloud, right? And by backing up information to the cloud, just knowing that you can easily manage it, access it, recover data from the cloud, and it's a simple, online web portal in the majority of cases, depending on the solution that you're going to go with. But I think it just boils down to that, having trust in the cloud. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do, and I think I think you're being very kind to your competition. I think it's also I think it's also having trust in the actual provider, right? And I think that
that's true too. Yeah.
This is an area where, well, I'll do it. So this is an area that where the organization that you're entrusting with that data becomes very important, and frankly, one of them is, can you get them on the phone to have a conversation with them? I mean, it's the bar in some cases is kind of low, right? So, but I think some things to look for there, Daniel, is sort of this concept of, if you look at the cloud, take you guys as an example, it's your guys' job to manage scaling secondary storage and to making sure that there's always enough capacity. That's not something that the IT guys need to have to worry about anymore, right?
Absolutely. If you don't have to go find another drive and plug in and expand your RAID and all that kind of stuff, that all that is handled by our team. Now, if there is an issue, not only do you not need to break open a manual and try to figure out the software and stuff like that, you've got access to a 24/7 support team as well that we provide to help you with those kinds of things. And whether it's from recoveries, whether it's an error message, whether it's a, hey, how do I do this? You've got access to a support team included. There's no extra charges for our support team. There's no tiered, if you only have a terabyte with us, then you get the bottom rung of our support guys, our trainees, or what have you. You've got a fully fledged, fully trained support team available to you 24/7 at any point in time to help with any of the issues.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think the other advantage of the typical cloud model, Carla, is sort of the subscription type of pricing where you pay for things as you go instead of, like we had talked about before, making this huge investment up front. So I think, part of building trust is maybe you don't push 3,000 laptops at the service day one, but you could start with 50 or 100, see how it goes, and then as people report back, hey, things are going pretty good, you just keep turning the dial up a little bit more. Does that make sense?
Of course it does, and having that subscription service is just a low monthly cost. So then, like you say, just sort of adding on there, as there are more devices, there's going to be more data to protect, of course, but that keeps it very simple. Just keeping it simple makes it easy for the organization. Yeah,
and it becomes that subscription model makes it become much more of an operational type of expense that matches, your rise in laptop need generally tracks along with the growth of your company, more employees, more laptops. So it just sort of scales well with the company. But I think the other key thing is, and that last bullet I have there, but the cloud is just the beginning, is important because, okay, once we say, cloud is cool, great, it does all these things, it gives me essentially globally accessible site, that's awesome, but I still need good stuff inside the cloud. And so the second step is to make sure that the protection component that your provider provides can do some really important things. So I think, and Daniel, you kind of talked about this, and I'm sure you deal with it a lot in your role, but being able to transparently deploy these systems, because people are bring your own device, that really becomes a critical aspect from an IT person's perspective, right? They don't want to have to call the user up and say, send me your laptop so I can install this software, right?
Right, exactly. Giving some power to the end users to make sure that maybe their backups aren't taking off right when they're doing other stuff during their normal off hours, and giving them the ability to do some of their own recoveries if you want them to, and being flexible in whether you have it completely locked down or you allow them to do specific things with the solution is great as well. So having the flexibility depending on the situation is something that a lot of products don't really do. It's a here's how you do things sort of situation. With us, it's you tell us how you want to do things and we make it work for you.
And Daniel, staying with you for a second, I would assume that first bullet of underneath rapid backups is really important. The ability to back up kind of granularly, because we are dealing at times with a thin, bandwidth connection, and so making sure that you can transfer data very, very efficiently becomes an important component as well. So can you talk a little bit about how you guys, manage efficiency?
Yeah, definitely. So we utilize a local database that we create, a small, cut down version of what we're capturing. And then we do byte level delta transfers. So we just take a look at the file that we're looking to capture, and we see which portion of that file we already have, and then whatever file we don't have, we roll that into the database, and then we push that up to the cloud. So it's very effective in making sure that if you have a 500 gigabyte laptop, that you're not pushing 500 gigabytes per backup. You're only pushing a couple gigabytes depending on how often we're doing the captures. So it's much faster, and it does tax the service, the device a lot less because we're not having to chew through 500 gigabytes of data every backup.
Makes sense. So let's talk about probably the next really important thing, step 3, which would be the ability to recover. Obviously, remote recovery becomes important here, Carla, because we need to, again, these laptops aren't going to be right next door. I think Daniel kind of highlighted a little bit the idea of end users being able to initiate their own recoveries. But this ability to do things remotely, both backup and certainly recovery, becomes really important for IT guys too, right?
It's critical. And going back to the example that you gave in the just beginning of the presentation of if you're going, in an airport, for example, you leave a laptop on a plane or just through the TSA security line, you walk away without your laptop. And because a lot of people don't have that password protection or don't have sufficient password protection, it can really easily be compromised. So to have that remote wipe feature and also to have a geolocate feature with or geofencing built in as well, so you can actually locate the device. If the device pops up in a different location, you can then automatically schedule a remote wipe because of that geofence. So all of these sort of really mobile device management type of functionality comes into play, and it's very critical in any type of backup and recovery solution.
Yeah, I was kind of chuckling at the guy who left his laptop, but I remember when I first started traveling. Nowadays, when I travel only with my iPad, I would have to always double check my bag because it was all suddenly, I dropped 4 or 5 pounds of travel weight all at once, right? And you're like, oh, I forgot it. Right. And then, of course, in my case, it was there. So, yeah, managing all that and being able to do remote wipes, I think, is important. I would think, Daniel, also, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but does remote wipe sort of play a role if in a BYOD situation where I have an employee that kind of has left the company?
Absolutely. So, remote wipe is great, right? So you lose the laptop, it's stolen, what have you, nuke the laptop, it's no longer of any use to whoever has it, they can sell it, whatever, but they don't have the corporate data. We take it a step further, and we do a selective style wipe. So what that allows you to do is if somebody brings their own personal laptop, it's got their 1-year-old's birthday photos on there and so forth, all those things that are not critical to the company but are critical to the person who's utilizing the laptop. Whatever is being backed up by the corporate software, which for all intents and purposes should be just corporate data, can be wiped off of that laptop, still stored in the cloud, of course, but wiped off that local laptop, and everything else stays intact. So we don't touch the end user's personal files as long as they're not capturing that with the corporate software, which they shouldn't be anyway. So it definitely allows you to be more granular in that effect.
Yeah, that's. I was thinking, but that's because you had used the term nuke the laptop, and I was thinking, wow, that could get you in trouble. But yeah, that the ability to do it selectively would definitely keep you out of trouble. So that's good. And then again, the ability to really deploy this flexibly. You can have on-premise. You can use multiple different types of clouds. We talk about this a lot. But a purpose-built cloud like a service that, say, you guys, InfoScale, would offer. So a lot of different ways to take advantage of flexibility. And I think the point here, Carla, is just that every organization is different and their needs are going to be different. And so your software shouldn't force you into a corner, right?
You hit the nail on the head with that, because different organizations are going to have different needs. Maybe some have a private cloud that they would like to utilize. Others are using a third-party cloud. There's just a lot that goes into the requirements for each and every organization. It's not that every organization is built the same. So it's a really critical piece to look at too, and just an important question to ask the provider as well. Do I have flexibility here? What are my options?
Yeah, exactly. And finally, ending with encryption. Daniel, encrypting data, that's old news, right? We don't need to do that anymore. I'm kidding. But I think a lot of people, unfortunately, kind of assume that it's there, and it's really important to verify that your data is being encrypted both in flight and at rest, right?
Absolutely. We kind of talked about it earlier with other file and sync services, file sharing and sync services, and so forth. A lot of people don't know that consumer-grade information is not encrypted. So while it may be in the cloud, you do have to double-check, is it encrypted in the cloud? If it's encrypted in the cloud, is it encrypted in transit as well? Because I don't know who's monitoring my connections. I do my best to make sure that they're not, but I don't know for sure. So verifying that you are in fact encrypted, and hopefully with high levels of encryption, military-grade encryption, is really what ensures that your data is not only protected at the data level, but at the transit level as well. So people can't just listen in on it.
Awesome. All right, so let me kind of summarize here, and then Carla, I'll transition it over to you. And I know that Daniel's got set up to do a demo. He is he's the risk taker of the group, because PowerPoint slides, they don't crash. I like those, but Daniel, he's our risk taker, so we'll let him do a demo. He got through a disaster recovery demo last time, so I'm thinking this ought to be a piece of cake for him. So now I just jinxed you. So anyways, just in summary, endpoint protection and of course recovery is really a critical part of the whole data protection solution. You can't, if you look at your data protection process and your data protection architecture, you can't really leave endpoints out anymore. They're just too critical. Again, I go back to that fact that 60% of data on laptops and endpoints is unique. That's a lot of data. So frequent backups is priority one. There's too much unique data on the laptops, which I kind of touched on. And I really think the cloud is ideal to give you that sort of centralized administration, not have to invest millions of dollars in storage for all this laptop data. I think it becomes a real critical element. So with that out of the way, I'm going to turn it over to you, Carla, and let you kind of talk a little bit about what InfoScale does, and then flip it over to Daniel for the demo.
Sure. Sounds great. Thank you. So this sort of goes back to what I mentioned very early on, right at the beginning of the presentation. It's our mission at InfoScale. It's to eradicate downtime and data loss. And so I have a couple of slides just to talk a little bit more about how we do this, why we do this, right? And then I'll pass it over to Daniel so we can actually see this sort of live and in action. And what we're doing at InfoScale is, taking into consideration these data protection problems, not only these that we've discussed today, right, but we're looking ahead to sort of determine how to best solve for downtime and data loss issues that will occur. What we're doing is utilizing the cloud to protect an organization's data and systems. And we really do it at a fraction of the cost and the complexity of some of those traditional BDR and maybe infrastructure-intensive solutions that have been out there in the past. And we touched a little bit a few moments ago on ransomware as well. So we have that technology built in as well, where you never have to pay a ransom. You can quickly recover operations in the wake of any ransomware attack or any hacker and restore a clean and uninfected version of your systems. So what we offer that I mentioned early on is cloud backup and disaster recovery as a service. Our cloud backup solution is what we'll sort of focus on today. It's a product that's an enterprise-grade, direct-to-cloud backup solution. It protects servers, desktops, laptops, tablets, and smartphones all in one solution. And so that's why we're going to be focusing on it is, the smartphones, tablets, laptops, that's what we've been focusing on when it comes to endpoints. So if we take a look here at our solution set, just to give you, everyone here, an overall idea of what our solution does before we dive into the details. We offer these three services. We have InfoScale Cloud Backup, Cloud Application Backup, and then Disaster Recovery. So that Cloud Backup solution, like I mentioned, that we'll focus on. But I also want to touch on just quickly our Cloud Application Backup and Disaster Recovery. So our disaster recovery solution is a hybrid cloud solution. It includes an on-prem component as well as the cloud, where there, of course, you can back up and recover data. It goes a step further. It captures full system images and allows you to boot and run those images on a local appliance or in the cloud, just depending on the type of outage. And then in the center here is InfoScale Cloud Application Backup. So the reason that we've put this into place is that leading cloud applications really only allow the recovery of, say, accidentally deleted data for a very, very limited time. SharePoint and OneDrive will keep deleted data for 90 days. O365, G Suite, Google Mail, those all keep it for 30 days. And then like a Salesforce.com, only 14 days. Yahoo Mail is the least, only 7 days at this point. So after that retention period runs out, the data is simply deleted forever. So with InfoScale Cloud Application Backup, we really eliminate that source of data loss with these Cloud Application Backup capabilities. So a little closer look at essentially the typical business and what InfoScale is doing in order to eradicate downtime and data loss. If we start sort of in the center with business apps and servers, those really mission critical, that mission critical data is generally going to be adequately protected with server backup and failover DRS type of functionality, right? But if you look along the top and bottom, if we look at remote workers, those branch offices, and all the endpoints that we've discussed, as well as those cloud applications, they're going to generally be, with the typical business, either completely exposed or simply not adequately protected. And because of this is why we've put these solutions in place, where we have InfoScale Cloud Application Backup, Disaster Recovery, and Cloud Backup to take into consideration the overall and comprehensive data protection solution that a typical business would need to have in place. So taking a look more specifically at cloud backup and recovery, you want to be able to protect all of your data and all of your devices from mobile phones to Exchange servers, right, which is the focus of what we've been talking about today, is those endpoints. So what we do with this data is also keep unlimited version history, which we've seen, especially in cloud applications, is really critical when you don't have those, you don't have that retention period, you don't have unlimited versioning. That becomes really critical, especially when it comes to security and compliance. So a moment ago, we touched on security, looking at different encryption systems. You want the data to be encrypted in transit and at rest, right? And when you have compliance requirements that come into play, you're going to need to keep that unlimited version history as well. We also have automated boot verification of backup jobs, which is a critical component. And that's a question that you want to be asking your solution provider. That's a feature and part of the functionality. We have anomaly detection alerts, which are going to come into play if any of your devices have potentially been encrypted by hackers or by ransomware. So we have that anomaly detection built into our cloud backup solution. And then we also have that geolocation, remote wipe, these features that we were talking about just a moment ago to protect your data and eliminate data loss. Along the bottom here, you can see the flexibility in recovery targets as well. You can store the data in any cloud. It could be the InfoScale cloud, your own private cloud, or third-party clouds as well. And then you can access that data anytime, anywhere from a centralized web-based dashboard. And we're going to see that in just a moment when we take a look at the live demo. But a good overall view of the InfoScale solution and all of the specifics is here on this slide. It's sort of one snapshot where you can see we protect any device, and again, from desktops and laptops across both Windows and Mac. Mobile devices are protected from iPhones to Androids, and also including that MDM, that mobile device management functionality that I just mentioned on the last slide. It includes servers as well, both physical and virtual servers. We support physical servers running Windows, Unix, and Linux, and virtual servers on VMware, Hyper-V, and KVM. So that is really the broadest support footprint that you will find in the industry today. The center of this slide here, you see our dashboard, which we're going to take a look at next in just a moment here. And then along the right, that target side where you can utilize any cloud. In the InfoScale cloud, we have 15 global data centers. So we have data centers located in the US, in Canada, South America, South Africa, the UK, Europe, and Asia. We also can support private clouds or public clouds. So we'll support AWS, IBM, and Google Cloud, Amazon as well. So we do have that flexibility on the target side, and that's built into the solution. And it's not only built into the cloud backup solution, but of course our disaster recovery solution as well. So I've talked a bit about the specifics, right, in terms of just here is how our cloud backup solution is set up and our overall cloud backup and DR services. But what we're going to do now is sort of switch gears to take a closer look not only at our dashboard, but actually to see more specifically how our cloud backup solution works and how that's going to work for endpoint protection. So what I'm going to do now is pass it over to Daniel, and Daniel's he has a screen share set up where he can bring us into the dashboard, and we'll just sort of take a look at it live in action. So Daniel, do you want to take it from here?
I do. Thank you, Carla. Give me just a second to share my screen here. Oh, it's stuck. Sorry, just a moment here. Having a couple of technical difficulties. Okay, now we should be seeing it.
Yep, I can see your screen.
Perfect. Great. So as Carla said, and as we've been talking about, we're going to be going over our direct-to-cloud solution today. So what you're seeing here is the InfoScale Dashboard. So this is the single pane of glass that we give to anybody that utilizes our solution. whether it's the direct-to-cloud solution, our disaster recovery solution, or our ICAB, Office 365, G Suite, SharePoint. All of that can be managed directly through this web page. So since we're talking about direct-to-cloud, you'll see all of your information here on the front page. It'll give you a breakdown as far as which companies you're capturing, which backup accounts are underneath those companies, the status of your backups, some more platform information as far as what types of devices you're protecting and backup accounts and so forth. Your quick links, so those are the most commonly used links in our system, just a nice little shortcut for you. Support links in the bottom left, download links in the middle here, and contact information in the bottom right. Really straightforward, not a whole lot of frills here, just making sure you've got all the information you need for you at front and center. So the way that InfoScale works is we're a tiered management system. So what that means is at the very bottom of that tier, you've got all the devices that you're protecting. So again, Windows, Mac, Android, and iOS are all the devices we're able to capture. Those devices are then attached to backup accounts. Backup accounts can be individual users. Backup accounts can be just admins for the company. We're getting back to the flexibility. We're very flexible as far as how the solution is deployed. If you want to give your end users access to their data and give them the ability to do their own recoveries, you can create a backup account for each person. If you want this to be a completely silent install, they don't know that it's there, they have no control over it, whatnot, you can have one backup account created for your admins and have all the devices tied to that backup account. There's no limit to the amount of devices you can attach. And then finally, your backup accounts are attached to company accounts. So again, just making it easy for you to find the backup accounts that you're looking for. Company accounts being the company that you're capturing. Backup accounts and users are admins, and devices are what we're capturing. So to give you an idea of what it would look like, first off, we can start with our companies page. And in this companies page is a list of the companies that we're capturing. So you get their name, who the admin is, total size for this company, which of course is changeable at any point in time, how much of their space they have allocated to their end users, and how much of that space is actually being used. Now, under the Create Companies section, you can see just all that information here, name, size, admin information, username and password, and so forth. And then we have the UltraSafe option. So what UltraSafe does is it allows you to create an account meant for those more security-conscious companies, those ones that are affected by federal regulations and so forth. It removes the ability to recover the password through security questions and answers. So it's much more secure in that those security questions and answers cannot be guessed, phished, socially engineered, or what have you. And it locks down that account to make it so that the password is internal only. Now, once that company is created, you're given some options as far as edits and changes you can make to these companies, but the main option that most people use is the recovery events report. But what that allows you to do is allows you to determine a date range, usually kind of a quarterly date range. It allows you to generate a report that lets you know all files that were recovered during that time frame, what their status was as far as if it was recovered successfully, where it was recovered to, what IP address, which backup account did the recovery, and so forth. So it gives you a full breakdown as far as the recoveries were concerned, so that, again, if there needs to be an audit to ensure that there's no files being placed where they shouldn't be, that can be generated very quickly. Once the company is created, you can go to your backup accounts, create your backup accounts here, and again, account name, company name, space used, and so forth. But you've got a few other options. So you can change the account size, of course. You can suspend the account if you're trying to get the end user's attention. We also have the cleanup account tool. So again, what this allows you to do is it makes that after initial backup a lot simpler. It allows you to delete specific file types, music folders, system temp and cache folders, alloc data files. making sure that if your customer decides they don't need this data or it was miscaptured or what have you, you don't have to go in and manually start deleting files. You can just select those specific files, click delete, and that'll also tell our system to not capture those file types on the next backup. Now, we also have our devices page. Devices, again, all the devices that we are currently capturing. It gives you a full breakdown, device names, so you can ensure you're talking to the correct device. A green dot lets you know that the device is currently on. You can send remote commands that we're talking to the services and so forth. And then you can configure backup jobs remotely, so you can choose what backups for this device to have. So great if the software is installed, but you haven't set up an initial backup, or you want to change the initial backup and lock the end user out of making any changes. You can do that through here as well. You can also download the logs remotely, so if there is an issue with the software, you don't have to have the customer open up a team viewer session so that you can dig down and try to remember where the logs are at or what have you. You can just click download logs, and that'll pull the logs to your local machine, break them open, and read them there in plain text. It'll let you know what the file is, what the issue is, and if there's a knowledge base article for it, the link to the knowledge base article. You can, of course, send that to our 24/7 support team, and they're happy to help with that. We also have run backup and update applications, so both of these are instant and silent. So select run backup, it'll run backup right then and there. Update application will update the software to the newest version. And both of these are available as mass actions as well, so you can run backups or update application on all of your devices at once. Now finally here we have that wipe device option that we were talking about earlier. You do have two different levels of wipe. You have the data wipe, which only deletes the files that are being backed up to the cloud and leaves everything else intact. So great for those BYOD situations. Wipe device wipes the entire device, pretty much nukes it and makes them need to reinstall Windows in order to access it again. Now we do also have backup policies. So these are templates that you can create within the dashboard that determine what the devices are capturing. So you can have the backups based on date, size. You can have it deleted out of the cloud after a certain amount of days. Have it back up automatically without user intervention, which is the normal default option. Set the time frame and then have it scan the entire computer or just users folder, so you can remotely choose what this device is going to capture based on these templates. Now, as far as reporting is concerned, you've got a reporting section here, and this lets you know the device that's being reported, what type of backup that it is. So if you're utilizing our other products such as disaster recovery or cloud-to-cloud backup, you'll have an idea of which solution we're talking about. Gives you a breakdown as far as the entire size of the backup and how many changes were there, how many new files, how many failed files, and so forth. And you've also got an events section. So the events section allows you to see that it was complete, if there was any issues. If there was an issue and there's a failure, which you don't have here currently, you can select the event and it'll give you a breakdown as far as what the errors were. Now under the settings monitoring tab, this is where more active monitoring is at, where we've got the actual email-based triggers. So you've got a daily monitoring event that lets you know all the backups that ran that day and what its status was. You've got trigger-based emails for things like getting close to going over quota, backups that haven't ran in 3 to 7 days, of course, full errors and so forth. You've got your daily account details email, so that gives you a breakdown of all of your accounts and who's closest to going over their quota. But the highlight of this page is definitely the anomaly detection. So anomaly detection, as we were talking about earlier, is our answer to ransomware. And what it does is it sets a threshold. So in this case, we've got a 3x threshold for your backups, so that if they are backing up, let's just say 10 files a day, and all of a sudden they start backing up 30, 40, 50 files a day, we're going to send you an email and let you know there's a lot of odd activity here. You may want to take a look at you may want to take a look at it. It could be ransomware because they're encrypting files on the back end, and we're seeing them as new or changed files. Now that's going to keep you up to date with all the newest file types, stuff that hasn't hit the airwaves yet, it hasn't hit the security boards yet. And then we have the ability to scan files for known ransomware. So we have a massive list of known ransomware extensions. As we're doing the backups, we'll scan for those extensions. Should we see them, we'll send you an email and let you know this is the extension we found. You may want to take a look at it. It could be ransomware. Now, this solution is fully white labeled as well. So you can white label the dashboard. You can white label the desktop software itself, so that should you want your customers to be utilizing your solution instead of the InfoScale solution, you can absolutely set that up to only be your brand. So just to recap, you've got your direct-to-cloud solution backing up directly to the cloud. It is encrypted 256-bit AES in transit and at rest in our data center. You get a ransomware detection solution as well, 24/7 stateside support, so phone, email, and chat. Unlimited training for your team and for anybody else that may be managing this solution, as well as deployments are all included with this solution. So that's a really high-level, quick breakdown of the direct-to-cloud solution. Please feel free to ask any questions that you may have in the questions and answers panel, and we'll get to that here shortly. Thank you, yes.
Hey, thanks, Daniel. Appreciate that. Could you flip the slides back over to me, please? While he's doing that, I wanted to just give you guys some quick details. Recording the webinar will be available right after we end, about 5 minutes. Same link as you used before, so feel free to forward that link to a colleague that you think might find the information valuable. There's tons of attachments and links in the attachments section that you can use to get more information. But mostly I want to jump right into the questions because we have a ton of questions. So guys, let's do rapid fire. We got about 8 minutes or so, 7 minutes to get through some questions here. And I'll just ask the question, and Daniel or Carla, you guys can just jump in to see who's going to answer it. If I need to recover an entire laptop, is there a way to have you ship me a USB hard drive or something instead of transferring all the data over the internet?
Yes, there is. We do offer a seeding service, or reverse seeding, basically, where we download your data to a drive within our data center, send that off to you, and you can load that back up onto your local machine.
Perfect. Let's see. Next up, can I have, so this must be an existing InfoScale customer, can I have the laptops in the office back up to my InfoScale appliance instead of direct to cloud?
You can, but it can be difficult due to the way IP addresses change on laptops, and the disaster recovery solution, the appliance-based solution, is backing up over IP address. Plus, you have to make sure that it's continuously connected during that phase. So is it possible? Yes. Should you do it? It's a longer conversation that I'd love to have. Okay,
fair enough. Let's see. By the way, you're doing great at answering quickly, Daniel. Appreciate that. Can the laptop agent auto throttle based on local laptop usage or be set to use X amount of available bandwidth?
So we have two different types of throttling. You have throttling based on capacity, so only replicate 50 gigabytes of data. After that, don't send anything until next month. We also have the ability to lock down based on bandwidth throttling. So you've only got 20 meg. You want to make sure we only use 5 meg during our backups. You can set that as well.
Okay, great. Let's see. Oh, this is an interesting question. I think I know where it came from too. Is there a size limit on how big of a file will be backed up?
There's not. We don't have a limit to say. That's just a quick answer. No, there's no size limit for that. Okay.
Yeah, I do know that some services actually won't back up files of a certain size or something like that. So that's good. Let's see.
You find that a lot with those file sync sharing products as well.
Exactly. Do you leverage data deduplication? What sort of efficiency do you get?
We do. It's not technically dedupe, as we're doing delta level replication, it gets the same effect. I couldn't give you an exact efficiency just because it's so wide range based on if it's images, if it's all file types and so forth. I can tell you that we have won many awards for our replication for our software, and one of the highlight points is our replication is a lot faster than other solutions. But giving you a direct number would be a shot in the dark, to be completely honest.
Okay, that's fair. Let's see. I think you mentioned this, Daniel, but what's your support like? 24/7?
Yep, 24/7 stateside, phone, email, and chat, 2-hour SLA, and that's for anything you need, if it's issues, questions, scenarios, etc.
Okay. Let's see. My problem is that the computer itself was stolen. I had a Windows image backup, but can't restore it to a new computer. Can you do that?
I can't restore your Windows image backup, but we definitely are hardware independent. So if you have a laptop, it gets stolen, you bring on a new laptop, we can restore the files to that laptop. We can restore your mobile phone files to a laptop if you wanted to. So we can absolutely kind of move that data around as needed.
Perfect. Okay. Let's see. We've got time for a couple more here. Can you replicate to multiple cloud services?
Yes. So we can replicate to, I think we went over AWS, Google Cloud, private cloud deployments, and of course the InfoScale public cloud, which is the majority of what we do. Okay.
Let's see. Let's wrap with maybe this one here. Are you SOX and HIPAA compliant?
Yes. So we have a whole host of compliances, SOX and HIPAA included. We've got CJIS compliance, so we're criminal justice information systems. We do BAAs for HIPAA compliance and so forth. So we absolutely have a whole host of compliances that we're happy to talk about and provide to you.
Okay, great. Well, Daniel, that was impressive to say the least. Good job with the rapid fire Q&A there. I've put the contact information up on the screen. If you need to reach out to either company, all that information is there. If you are listening on demand, and we have many on-demand viewers, feel free to email me questions directly. That is my legitimate email address. I do not need any investment opportunities in gold mines in foreign countries, just FYI. But if you have a legitimate question about this webinar, please go ahead and email me. Also, you could tweet us questions at Storage Swiss. We keep a close eye on that channel. But, that brings us to the top of the hour. So, Carla and Daniel, thanks for joining us on the webinar today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, great topic, great content. And I also want to thank all you for joining us. And again, this is George Crump, lead analyst with Storage Switzerland. Have a great rest of your day.